Good morning, everybody, and thank you for your patience today. Sorry for starting for just a few minutes late. We want to welcome you to today's webinar on the GE Statoil Innovative Sand and Water Technologies in Onshore Operations Grand Challenge, Reduced Use of Sand in Onshore Operations. My name is Casey Shapiro, and I will be your host and moderator for this webinar. So at this time, I'll briefly go through the agenda for this webinar. First, we'll provide the speaker introductions, then we'll provide an overview of the challenge. After that, we'll present frequently asked questions of the challenge, and then work through a live audience Q&A. To participate in this live Q&A, please submit your questions at any time through the Q&A chat box. We will collect and present the questions during the live Q&A section. If we do not answer your questions live, please note that we will be transcribing and answering all questions asked during this session, posting them in the challenge forum for viewing at a later date. Finally, we will wrap up with information on what you can do today for the challenge, including where to register, how to stay connected, and how to submit your proposal. Additionally, during this webinar, we invite you to live tweet any and all facts that we might use. Use any or all of the hashtags that you see at the bottom of the slide below. Hashtag NSWebinar, hashtag GE Statoil Webinar, hashtag GE Statoil Collab. And then also you can attention to any or all of the following handles, which are at 9 Sigma, at General Electric, and at Statoil North A. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and welcome our following speakers to the webinar this morning. From GE, we have Diane Finkhausen, Director, Open Innovation and Advanced Manufacturing. From Statoil, we have Per Sandberg, Vice President, Chief of Innovation, and Ray Ellis, Simulation Specialist. And from 9 Sigma, we have Al Malouf, Senior Program Manager. So today, the topic of today's webinar is the GE Statoil Innovative Sand and Water Technologies for Onshore Operations Grand Challenge. Topic number 1, reducing the use of sand in onshore operations. So 9 Sigma, representing the General Electric Company in Statoil, invites proposals for innovative technologies to replace or reduce the amount of sand required for hydraulic fracturing of oil and gas wells. So now we're going to hear from Diane and Per on GE and Statoil's vision for this challenge. So Diane and Per, you're ready to go.
Okay, thanks Casey, and good morning, good afternoon everyone. Thanks for joining us. Very excited to connect with you and share our thoughts about the impact of this particular opportunity. GE and Statoil have launched a collaboration to accelerate the development of more environmentally and economically sustainable energy solutions. This technology-focused collaboration is largely aimed at driving an industrial response to some of the greatest challenges facing global energy production, including flaring, CO2 and methane emissions, and water usage. This grand challenge that we're here to talk about today is really a search or an exploration of innovations and innovative ideas that will help us reduce the environmental footprint of oil and gas exploration, development, and production. Fundamentally, energy is a global need powering lives and driving global economies. And in recent years, we've seen an increased awareness of the impact that energy production activities have on the environment. And that simultaneously, energy demand is growing globally, requiring greatest efficiencies in consideration of new energy sources. So really, this is why GE and Statoil are taking the opportunity to lead the industry charge for more efficient energy production. And really, this too is why your participation is absolutely essential in this campaign to help bring new and innovative ideas and technologies to the table, because you have a key role to play in fueling a responsible, sustainable future for the world. This is a great opportunity for GE, Statoil, and you to come together and create a more innovative landscape for the industry at large, and to create better outcomes for the communities and the various providers in this space. So we thank you again for your participation in the webinar this morning, but in and more importantly, in the campaign as we explore new innovative technologies and approaches. So with that said, I'll hand it off to Per to walk us through the details of these campaigns.
Thank you, Diane. So I'm Per Sandberg from Statoil, and as Diane said, we're actually very happy to have an open innovation component of this collaboration, which we've just started up between Statoil and GE. We need good input. We think we have a good team already, with Statoil being an operator and developer of oil and gas business, and GE, of course, a great technology provider. And so we think we are a good team with third-party ideas coming in through the Open Innovation Challenge. The one we're focusing on now, and as the first challenge in this program, is as you know, on how we can improve the sand and water technologies used in the onshore fracking operations. On the technical level, we're zooming in on the sand and water and improving the actual operations. It's also very important for us that these improvements of the fracking operations will result in a reduced trucking. That is also an objective because, as many of you know, trucking, because we need to transport by trucks, a lot of sand and a lot of water to operation, this becomes environmental and social burden in the local community. So we want to reduce trucking by reducing the need of trucking, and therefore we zoom in on the two biggest drivers of trucking, which is sand and water. And today, and the challenge which is out now is on the sand. Water will come later in the year. And there are two focus areas. One, how can we make more use of the water which we have inserted in the fracks? Like, how can we keep the sand suspended for longer and more efficiently using less sand? And the second focused area is, how can we develop other materials to reduce or replace the use of sand? And we will have our experts who can go deeper into really what this challenge is and what we're looking for. So I will be handing over to our technical experts.
Great, thank you so much, Per and Diane. So like Per said, we're going to be handing this over to Ray to go through the technical aspects of the challenge. Okay, Ray, you're ready to go.
Okay, thank you, Casey. I'm going to give you just a very high-level overview of what one of the challenges and issues that we face in order that directly affects the volume of sand that's required, and that is to keep sand suspended where we need it. So what I'm going to do is go through a series of cartoons here. So if you can just imagine a vertical slice through the earth, and if you were to be able to view that slice from the side in real time as a hydraulic fracture is developing, that's what you're going to see in the sequence of cartoons. So in number one, what we're looking at vertically, if you see the round looking pipe vertically, that would simulate the casing. And then if you see the gray looking horizontal rectangle, that would be representing the formation or the reservoir that contains hydrocarbon. And then you see an elliptical looking shape, that would be the hydraulic fracture. And so in cartoon number one, basically all we're doing there is we're pumping fluid, in this case water, to crack the rock or the formation to create a volume that we can then place sand or proppant. In this case, we call it proppant because it's actually an agent that keeps the fracture propped open, so that's more a generic term. In cartoon number two, you can see the gray ellipse now appears in there, which that one is the proppant or sand that we are now injecting into the formation. And as you can see, as we step through this series of cartoons to number three, we're increasing the concentration of the sand. So you're seeing a darker ellipse. And then number four, we're just continuing this operation until we get to the end of pumping our frac treatment in number five. And you can see, because sand has a specific gravity of 2.65 and water has a specific gravity of 1, that gravity takes over and it pulls all of the sand as this fracture that we've created is still open, and the sand falls down. And in number 6, after everything is done and the fracture has completely healed or closed after all of the pressure has dissipated, what we end up with in most cases is this sand is now at the very bottom of the created fracture, and you can see our reservoir, the rectangular box there, is left with very little of it, having any actual sand where the oil and gas can now go through this more permeable material into the casing and then flow it to the surface. Okay, so if we go to the next slide, this is just a little more detail in this slide depicting the cartoon, but now we've actually used an actual fracturing simulator to show this in a little bit more detail. So the diagram on the left, if you see the magenta looking outline, that is where the fracture that we created exists. And you can see the different colored ellipses down at the very bottom of it. That's the sand that we pumped in. And that's what we think that we're getting today in most cases, is all of our sand is at the bottom. It's not staying adjacent the hydrocarbon-bearing reservoir. On the right, if we could keep the sand suspended better, you can see now the distribution of that material is filling all of the space that we've created, and therefore it has a much better ability to flow the hydrocarbon from the reservoir into the casing. So if we could keep this sand suspended, we get a much more effective fracture dimension. So the fracture dimension, of course, the effective part is where the sand is. Therefore, the picture on the right you can see would be a much more effective use. If we could somehow come up with a way to do that, we could reduce the amount of sand required, because today we're having to pump a much higher volume of sand in order to try to have enough of it adjacent the actual reservoir. So that's our first one, is keeping sand suspended, our first focal point. The second one is to find a completely different replacement for sand. So what I've done is I've just shown some pictures here of materials that have been used in the past or that are currently being used. So you can see, starting from the left, it's called brown sand, and it's increasing in quality from left to right. Brown sand is a material, as you can see, that it's not very white because it has a bunch of minerals and materials in there that causes it to have a discoloration. It's also very angular. The middle picture shows white sand, which is a much higher quality. It's more round. It's more clear because it doesn't have much impurities in it. And then on the far right is a ceramic proppant that is a man-made material. It's not mined naturally like the other two. It's much stronger. It's much better. It holds up much better under higher stress and temperature conditions. So in the past, we have sought to find a replacement for some of these materials, like, for instance, we have used glass beads, and we've used things like even walnut hulls and plastic beads to search for something that has a much lower specific gravity so that it does stay suspended better in the fluids that we use to place these sands and proppants into the formation. And so it's a situation where I'm not trying to influence you by giving you some of these alternative materials in what could be used. I'm just merely saying that in the past we have sought to find a perfect substitute for natural sand. And by perfect, I mean something that's as light as water, that's as strong as diamonds, and that's very cost efficient. Size is also something that was very important, because the fractures that we create have an aperture or a width. It's only somewhere in the order of about 0.1 inches in these unconventional reservoirs that we call shales, which would be about 2,500 microns. And so when you're looking at the existent proppants that we have today, they range in size somewhere between 211 and 840 micrometers. So I mean, we have to have a material, obviously, that can fit into the fracture, as well as these other properties of strong, light, and cost efficient. And that concludes that for the technical discussion.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ray. So now we're going to hand it off to Al, who will be going through the timeline and the evaluation criteria for this challenge. Al?
Yes, thank you, Casey. Just briefly, I want to go through the timeline here. And the challenge launched on January 28th. and will close at 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time in the U.S. That's an important thing to remember and note, because at 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, not your local time, the respond button will disappear off the website and you will no longer be able to submit your proposal. So please note that time and date on your calendars. Once all the proposals have been submitted, we'll start the review process, and GE and Statoil has a team of technical experts that will go through and review the proposals, and the plan is to announce the winners by the end of June. Okay, so what are some of the evaluation criteria the experts will be using to rank the proposals? Well, first is going to be technical readiness or technical maturity. So that's obviously something that's important to the sponsors. They want something to actually come to fruition within 1 to 5 years. Performance considerations, so the technology performance relative to how well your technology can reduce the use of sand by either improving the suspension of sand or replacing sand as a proppant. The ability to commercialize. The sponsors really want to make a change, a real change, realize a real change in the way that they're producing hydrocarbons. And so the ability to commercialize will be one of the criteria that they'll use for evaluating your response. Obviously, they want to evaluate based on the high-level goal of this challenge, which is to reduce trucking. So that's something that will be weighed in terms of your technology, and also, how well your technology can be used in the field in terms of legal requirements that the oil and gas companies have to abide by. So, for example, if your technology does a great job of suspending sand, but is not practical to implement in the field, or is too toxic or something like that, that's something that they'll weigh during the review process. And of course, as with all proposals, the entrance capabilities and experience will be factored in. Now having said all that, the goal of the challenge is to identify innovative technologies. And so the reviewer's job is to balance all of these criteria. So if you think you have an innovative technology, please contact us or respond to this challenge. We're really encouraging you to do so. And don't try and weigh these different criteria yourself. It's really the experts from GE and Statoil who are responsible for doing that.
Great, thanks so much, Al. And so why should solution providers be interested?
Well, there's of course the funding, and that's significant. There's going to be up to 5 winners which receive a $25,000 award. And then there's a pool that'll be shared for the next level of $375,000. So that's a significant amount of money to help move your technology along. You also have, beyond those cash awards, the ability to develop a long-term relationship with the sponsors. Secondly, this is an important one for most people who respond to these challenges. You maintain your intellectual property. The sponsors are not going to make any claim on your intellectual property because you're submitting a proposal. And you have the opportunity to commercialize your technology. And I think that this is a really great motivator for people to respond, because here's a group of very dedicated companies that will help you commercialize, and that's an opportunity that very few people have. In terms of the technology respondents, and then at a higher level, this is really an opportunity to help solve some of the biggest challenges facing the global oil and gas industry.
Great. So now we're going to be going through the challenge FAQs. These are some of the questions that are frequently asked during the course of the challenge, and we want to address them here rather than address them during the live Q&A so that we can save more time for your actual questions that you have coming in. Just a reminder, you can submit those at any time during the Q&A, or I should say, on the Q&A chat box. So the first question we have is it possible to submit videos, YouTube files, etc. with the proposal? Is this option highly recommended? or would that give a higher rating during the evaluation process phase?
So first, let me say that please do not submit a video file. You're limited to 10 megabytes for your total submission, and these large video files are very difficult for us to move around. Please provide a link. If you want to submit or have the reviewers view a video, please give us a link to the video on YouTube or wherever the video resides on the web. As in relation to that will give you a higher relationship, it really depends on how effective your video is. If the reviewers have to watch a 5-minute video and it doesn't really help them understand your technology, then obviously that's not working for you. But if you feel that the video is helpful in explaining in a visual way how your technology works, then of course that would be helpful for you. So.
Great. So number 2, what level of technical readiness are the sponsors looking for?
So as I said before, the sponsors are really looking for a tangible outcome for this challenge. And so they'd like to have technologies that can be commercialized in 1 to 5 years. In order to achieve that timeline, they're hoping to get technologies that you can provide proof of concept for within 6 to 24 months. So proof of concept or some indication that the technology is actually feasible.
So what about my IP?
Okay, so we repeated this one because it's one of the questions we get all the time and probably the most popular question. And again, by submitting a response, you do not compromise your IP. The respondent maintains possession of their IP.
Great. So again, we went through this briefly before, but what exactly is the award structure?
I think, Diane, I'm going to let you answer this one.
You ready to go, Diane?
Thank you. Al, can you repeat the question?
Sure. What is the award structure?
Yeah, so thank you. So we have a robust award structure for this particular challenge, really calling out the need for proposals that present some merit to this particular problem statement. We have offered up initial cash awards for the most promising proposals received, and then for those winners of the initial campaign that agree to participate in a joint development agreement with the sponsors, we will also entertain joint development agreements for this particular challenge. So all those details can be found at the website itself. I would encourage you to read the terms and conditions and the award structure on the challenge site itself. But for those that don't have immediate access to the challenge site, the cash awards will be made available for up to 5 winning respondents in an amount of $25,000 each. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the 5 winners who agree to enter into a joint development agreement with the sponsors of the campaign will receive additional funding for a 6-month period for the co-development of those technologies from a total prize pool of up to $375,000 US.
Great, thank you so much, Diane. So moving on, will I receive a detailed review if my proposal is not selected?
Okay, so everyone will be notified after the reviewers make their selection as to the status of their proposal. So you'll be notified if you were not selected by MyMe 9 Sigma. The winners will be notified typically by the sponsors. So everyone will get a notification about the status of their proposal. However, you will not receive the detailed proposal. That's just not feasible given the number of proposals we expect to receive.
Great, thank you so much, Al. So that now moves us to the live Q&A section. At this time, like I said, we're going to be opening up the session to all the questions that you might have from the audience. Please continue to submit your questions through the Q&A chat box. We've already received a few. We're going to be taking the rest of this time to answer them live. And then again, as a reminder, if we don't get to your question, don't worry. Our Q&A session is being archived, and all questions and answers will be made available on the challenge site following this webinar. And then another reminder, feel free to live tweet any of these facts you hear during this webinar. Just use the hashtags that you see at the bottom of the slides on the screen. So the first question that we have is, what parameters were changed in the simulation from right to left?
So maybe we can go back to that slide. And Ray, I think this is a question for you.
Yeah, this is, I guess, I'm assuming referring to the simulation with the showing the settled proppant on the left and the suspended proppant on the right. And the only thing that was really changed was the viscosity of the fluid. So the picture on the diagram on the left, where it shows the settling of the proppant, was a very thin fluid, more representative of what is being pumped today, so that the viscosity degrades or reduces over time with temperature. And on the right, this was a simulation where we basically just input some parameters of a fluid that would not, it would stay very viscous over a long period of time. And so it was just a much higher viscosity, so it didn't settle.
Great, thank you, Ray. I'm going to go ahead and get us back down to there we go, this slide. So how many proposals do you anticipate receiving?
Well, that's a little difficult to guess, but you know, we're hoping you know, anywhere from 50, you know, plus or minus.
I think it's a difficult a question to answer, but we really the quantity is never a factor. We always are looking at the qualifications and making sure that we're taking a look at what you propose. So if you have an answer that you feel is going to work for this, please propose it, and we'll take a look and make sure that we evaluate it as well as we can. So we have a quick question. There's a little bit of a confusion about the phase deadline, so I'm just going to go ahead and see, is there a little bit more we can do to explain the deadline phase?
Well, according to the terms and conditions, I'm not sure. The person's asking about a change in the deadline, but there is no change. The deadline is 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, April 28th. So please note that on your calendar.
Okay, we have another question, and this is often asked. The slides, we're getting asked if the slides are going to be available afterwards. Not the slides necessarily, but the recording of this is actually going to be live on the forum on the challenge website after this. Give it about 48 to 72 hours along with a transcription of this so that you can use all of the information that we have available now and review it and be able to use that for your proposal as well. So the next question is a fairly specific one, but my specialty is on the fluid side, foams and dispersed phases. Do I need to wait until the next round when you offer water-related topics?
I think the GE Statoil team, anyone on that team that wants to take that question?
Well, I think that, you know, from a technical standpoint, whatever the carrier fluid, and I say fluid in terms of any type of, it could be water, it could be foam, it could be, you know, any combination thereof, would still be applicable to this as it affects, for instance, the distribution of the proppant within the fracture. So if it's something that keeps it from settling, then I think it's appropriate to this.
And I don't think you're prevented from submitting to the water if you also have a technology that can apply to both challenges. So I think you should go ahead and apply to this challenge.
Great. So how is my IP secured at submission? Will you execute an NDA prior to my submission?
No, you're not allowed to include any confidential information with your submission. So there shouldn't be an IP issue to begin with. If you're a winner, then there will be an NDA. You'll sign an NDA before you reveal any confidential information. But for this initial phase, we're not allowing confidential information to be exchanged, and we will not. So that won't be an opportunity to challenge to compromise your IP.
So we'll, sorry, we're fielding them as they come in. I apologize for the delay. Will potential negative environmental impact of solutions be part of the evaluation criteria?
Ray, I assume that the answer to that is yes.
Well, I mean, if it's a negative impact, absolutely. But conversely, if it's a positive, then obviously that would be something we would want to look at. But yes, that's going to be part of the evaluation.
Great. So just as a follow-up to the IP question, what if it is difficult to submit a proposal without communicating confidential info?
I'm going to take this one. So this is something that 9 Sigma has been doing for 15 years, coaching respondents on how to do that. If you have a question about how to submit a proposal without revealing your confidential information, I suggest you contact me and I'll help coach you through that.
Great. Okay, so we have a question about GE's motivation for participating. We've kind of gone through this earlier, but Diane, if you'd be able to go through it again. So what is GE's motivation for sponsoring this challenge?
Yeah, so thank you. Is this collaboration with Statoil and fundamentally this challenge as well is of great strategic importance to GE. We care deeply about partnering with our customers and with the community that 9 Sigma has curated in order to develop more environmentally and economically sustainable energy solutions. Energy is a core business, a core tenet of the GE family of businesses, and it is important to us that we continuously invest with our resources and our partners and our customers in order to advance and improve the outcomes for this industry. So it's fundamentally core to our strategic direction for our business and a great opportunity to partner with Statoil and with the community within the 9 Sigma platform.
Great, thank you so much, Diane. So I'm going to go ahead and encourage anybody else who has any last-minute questions to get in. It seems as though we have one last one as I'm stating that. So how extensive should the submissions be? What are your expectations for length, references cited, experimental data, et cetera?
Your submission is limited to 10 megabits, and you're allowed to include supplemental information as well. All of that is limited to 10 megabytes of information. Really, we want you to submit something that's succinct. Obviously, we don't want you to submit a 20-page proposal, but something that's reasonable for the reviewers to digest. What we're asking you to do, just to get back to merge this with the previous questions, we want you to tell us what your technology can do without telling us how your technology works or identifying the specific molecules or whatever that you're using. So any information that you think will strengthen your proposal, you're welcome to include. But again, please take the reviewers into consideration and not just pad your proposal information. It's not just to increase the length of it. Ray, do you have any other comments on that?
I would just say to maybe anyone that has submitted an abstract, for a detailed technical paper, it would be along the lines of that. An abstract gives a pretty good overview and enough technical information to intrigue the reviewers to want to see more in a paper, and that's kind of what we're looking for here.
Great, thank you so much, Ray. So it seems as though we have run out of questions from the live Q&A. If you have any additional ones, please feel free to submit them at this time. We have a little bit more time left so that if we do receive a few more while we're going through the wrap-up, we will answer them after the wrap-up is done. And if we do miss any, like I said, they will be on the on the recorded webinar that we will post on the forum, and also on the in the transcribed version of this as well. So we actually received one more. Before I wrap up everything, I'll go ahead and answer that really quickly, and then we will go through the wrap-up. So in terms of technology, does it have to have already been tested, or can it be a new novel technique that might require over 6 months to develop?
I would absolutely say it could be a novel. That's what we're actually looking for here is innovation. So that's I think, to me, one of the main driving principles behind this whole challenge.
Yeah.
Alpha, wouldn't you agree with that?
Absolutely. Yep. And that's the point I tried to make when we went over the criteria as well. Is the whole goal of the challenge is to receive these innovative proposals that really move the needle.
Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the wrap-up here. So what can you do today? As we've been mentioning the entire webinar long, you need to visit our challenge website, which is www.poweringcollaboration.com. There you can register to receive updates, view the FAQs, and join the community, and stay connected via the community forum. That community forum is exactly where we will be posting this recording and the transcription. You can get all of this information after the webinar is over. And then for questions, you can contact the Grand Challenge Help Desk, which the email is grandchallenge@9sigma.com. The phone number is 216-283-3901. And then, of course, submit your proposal. As we've mentioned, the deadline for submissions is April 28th, 2015. So I want to thank everybody again for joining us this morning. I want to thank our speakers for their time and expertise. Again, for additional information, visit that challenge site and participate in the challenge forum. One last reminder that this webinar was recorded and will be made available on the challenge site along with the Q&A transcript. Thank you all for attending, and thank you to our speakers for their time and expertise. We appreciate your time and look forward to receiving your submissions. Again, the deadline for that submission is April 28th, 2015, 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a great day.